Good afternoon, welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlotte and this is Charlotte Shelves. In today's video, I wanted to share with you all the books that I would love to read in 2026. This list encompasses some new book releases that I'm very excited about, but also some classics and some items that have been on my TBR for a little while. They also cover, I think, 4 or 5 main genres, and that is horrors, thrillers, literary fiction. I've got some items of sci-fi, I've got some non-fiction if I haven't already said that, and a couple of poetry anthologies. So please keep watching. If you haven't already, please do consider like, commenting and subscribing. It's a really simple and free way that you can help support my channel. The first genre that I am starting with is sci-fi. So I think there are 3 or 4 books in this genre that I want to tackle in 2026. The first is actually a sci-fi series. I'm just finished the first in the series on my Kindle, and this is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. I'm just going to read you a quick plot summary. In a corporate-controlled space-faring future, planetary missions are approved and equipped by the company, including security androids, but cost-cutting and not safety drives every decision. On a distant planet, a team of scientists conduct surface tests under the watch of their company-issued sec unit. This is Murderbot. It is a self-aware security android that has hacked its own module and secretly calls itself Murderbot. So it's kind of self-aware, it kind of self-identifies. It does not enjoy the company of humans at all. It actually has human characteristics to it. It is anxious and it is introverted, and it does not enjoy being in the company of other human beings. It's more happy to be watching the hours of media that it has stored back on its processing chip. It loves watching TV series, and whilst this group are on their mission, the scientists realise something or someone is trying to sabotage it. The scientists and their guardian must work together to uncover the truth. This is I think it's a 6-part series now, and I think it could become my new obsession. I've just finished the first book, which is All Systems Red, and I gave that a solid 4 stars. What I enjoy about this book, and what I hope the rest of them in this series bring, is that they are light-hearted, fast-paced, they're not too graphic or violent, they are immersive, like the worlds and the characters in this, you are straight away, it's very believable. One plot device I really enjoyed was this push and pull between the other characters in the book not realising that this machine had sort of self-awareness, that they'd been able to hack their own chip, and Murderbot was trying to modify their behaviour to not reveal this about themselves because there would be consequences. This novel had a surprising amount of humour and levity because of Murderbot's awkwardness, and I've not read a sci-fi in which like androids or these types of creatures have social anxiety. It was very novel to me and it was quite fun. I was expecting this to be quite hard-hitting because it is called the Murderbot series, and it's not at all. It's quite light-hearted, as I've already said, and these little elements of humour that play through the rest of the sci-fi aspects are it's just a great pairing. I really enjoyed this. The second sci-fi that I would like to get to this year is Artemis by Andy Weir. He also wrote The Martian, and I read Project Hail Mary last summer. I don't have a dust jacket for this because I bought it secondhand in a charity shop, but it's in nice condition. I'm not going to lie to you, the plot for this does sound bananas. It doesn't sound as interesting to me as his other 2 books, but I will share a quick summary for your consideration. Jasmine never meant to be a hero, she just wants to get rich. Just wealthy enough to escape her coffin-sized apartment in Artemis, the humans' first lunar city, and pay off debt. When a chance and massive score comes along, Jazz can't resist. Pulling it off means going from small-time smuggler to criminal mastermind. Using her intellect, technical skills, and a healthy dose of swagger, her heist drops her into a dangerous conspiracy over control of Artemis itself. Hunted by both the killer and the law, Jazz is in over her head. Staying alive may require her most daring scheme yet. Jazz isn't a hero, but a very good criminal, and that might be enough. Brimming with clever problem solving, sharp humour and high stakes suspense, Artemis is another irresistible sci-fi adventure. Within that blurb, there are so many good sci-fi ingredients, like a lunar colony, fascinating, amazing, but then layered on top of that with this heist plot. Just from the description alone and from a handful of reviews that I've tried to not read, it does seem a little silly. This is his lowest rated book on Storygraph. I think this is floating around a 3.4, 3.5. I think this has probably lowered my expectation going in anyway, so I might actually enjoy it more. I kind of had that in the summer where I read a horror that had a really low rating, but when I actually read it, I didn't find it too bad. So maybe I will have that experience reading this. If you have read it, where do you rank it within Project Hail Mary and The Martian? I fully anticipate this might come bottom of his works, but I'm still going to read it, and then that means I've read all of his books so far. Third sci-fi that I would really love to read is a classic, and I might have mentioned wanting to read it on my channel before. It is Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. This is a sci-fi classic from the 50s, and I've really been wanting to get around to it. My understanding of the plot is that there is this mysterious or sort of celestial type event that's causing blindness all of a sudden in the human race, and this novel I think is based in England or around London, and many human beings are affected by this sudden blindness and society starts to collapse. Simultaneously, there are also creatures in this version of England called triffids, and they are being looked after by scientists, and these are like man-eating carnivorous type plants who I think are also able to move themselves, but due to the people becoming suddenly blind and ill and all these other issues going on, these plants that are growing suddenly get out of control. I believe the novel charts society kind of collapsing and then trying to rebuild itself, but also fighting off the threat of these carnivorous plants. I think this novel could be cast as apocalyptic or dystopian. If you've read it, do let me know. It was another classic that my late grandfather really loved, and I didn't read it in his lifetime, and I would have loved to have shared and discussed this one with him as we discussed so many other classic sci-fis together. I wonder if a lot of this book will be dedicated to the aftermath of these sorts of events that have happened. I think I read in a review for it that there are sacrifices that have to be made in order to rehabilitate or recreate society, and it's kind of a comment on what society could look like sort of post-collapse and what this new world might be. If I'm wildly incorrect, do let me know in the comments. Oh, my dog looks so cute right now. Let me show you. Look at him. Just the coziest little boy. King of the house, huh? King of the house. Next, I have literary fiction. The first book is called What We Can Know by Ian McEwan. This came out only in the last year, and it completely missed me. This is one I don't know much about, other than I believe it's in the genre of, it's literary fiction, but also post-apocalyptic themed, which intrigues me. In his works, Machines Like Me and Child in Time, there's a sort of touch of sci-fi, sort of dystopian type elements or sort of speculative futures that he has dipped into. I haven't read a work of his yet that could be classified as dystopian, so I'm particularly intrigued to read this. This is described as a quest, literary thriller and love story. It spans past, present and future to explore who we are and where we're headed. This is quite enigmatic as well, it doesn't really give much away, and it says in 2014 a powerful poem is read once and lost. By 2119, as in 2119, rising seas have submerged much of the UK and survivors mourn a vanished world. Tom Metcalfe, a scholar in Britain's remaining archipelagos, uncovers a clue to the missing poem, revealing entangled love, a brutal crime, and truths that upend everything he thought he knew. A haunting and hopeful novel that imagines a future where all is not quite lost. I was watching an interview with McEwan who was kind of talking around this latest book, and he said that this book, mostly a discussion of time and our relationship to time, but also our relationship to the past, and I was just like, what does that mean? It certainly sounds cerebral and thought-provoking, and I would love to grab a copy of this. The next item of literary fiction is The Pretender by Joe Harkin. I've managed to grab a reservation for this, and it is at my local library. I'm very excited. This was, I think, a good chunk of time on the Times literary bestseller list. It's got a lot of accolades and reviews, and this is a literary historicism, literary fiction type work, but it's also been lauded for its humour. It's meant to be funny, like darkly funny and kind of grotesque. I will read you a quick blurb, and it says, "This is a historical novel set in the aftermath of the War of the Roses, following a young boy drawn into a world of royal politics when powerful figures decide that he could serve as a useful stand-in for a lost prince. Raised from court, the boy is suddenly thrust into a life of training, performance and deception, surrounded by ambitious nobles, scheming power brokers and shifting loyalties. He learns how history can be shaped by those who tell it, but must navigate questions of identity, truth and survival, where being believed can be as important as being legitimate. Blending sharp wit with political intrigue, The Pretender explores how power operates behind the scenes and how ordinary people are often swept up in the making of history, whether they want it to be or not." I think that sounds great. And also the reviews and these little tantalizing snippets, tidbits I keep seeing are calling it really grotesque and crude. There are quite a few people offended in some of the reviews, saying that the humour in this is vulgar, and that is tantalizing to my impish brain. I can't remember the last time I read a book that was kind of characterized as being filthy and utterly naughty. Like, that's very appealing to me. I haven't read anything like that in a long time, and I love literary historical fiction. This could be a good read for me in 2026. The next book that I would put under the bracket of literary fiction, but it's probably more like classical adaptation maybe, I'm not sure, but that is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I've wanted to read this for a really long time. You have probably seen me show this on my channel 3 or 4 times now. I got given this copy last Christmas and I'm finally reading it, and I am enjoying it. I'm 140 or so pages through. So far, solid 4, I would say. It will have to be exceptional and that little bit extra for it to be a 5. I feel very transported by Miller's writing style and this slower sort of smouldering relationship between our 2 sort of lead protagonists, I suppose. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it is beautiful and it was poetic and it is lyrical. It's so gorgeous, and I'm always kicking myself for how long it's taken me to get to it. This is a reimagining of the relationship, a sort of queer reimagining, I suppose, of Patroclus and Achilles, and it's a reimagining of the Trojan War. Achilles very early on is prophesied as being this future great warrior, and Patroclus is his chosen companion, and this, where I'm up to so far, it's kind of just chronicled their youth, what they have been experiencing, going through training as warriors. We are also learning how much of like all the lack of agency that I suppose they have, because so much of who they are becoming is kind of fated in the stars or predestined by the gods, and there's this tension between who I think they're expected to be versus who I think these characters feel they are, or what kind of legacy they are going to leave behind them. And a lot of the actions and the decisions that they're making now are kind of building up to this war and these battles that I think they're about to face. And I have put this off because I've heard this is also devastating and sad in some places. I have that to look forward to. The next book I know nothing about. Pushed myself out of my comfort zone and joined a book club this year, and this was the first pick for the month of January that they have chosen. It is called Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. This is I think it's a mid-20th century classic novel. My copy's on Kindle. I'll read you the blurb. This follows a wealthy Tokyo dilettante who travels to a remote hot spring town in Japan's snowy north. There, he becomes entangled in a delicate, fleeting relationship with Kamako, a geisha whose warmth and intensity contrast sharply with the cold, isolated landscape. As he returns to the region over time, the novel traces moments of connection, distance, and longing between its characters, capturing the beauty and sadness of encounters that can never fully endure. This is a spare, poetic, and atmospheric work. It is a meditation on desire, impermanence, and the quiet ache of unfulfilled love. That sounds heavy going, doesn't it? Like, that sounds like it's gonna hurt my heart this month. It's also quoted as being Kawabata's masterpiece. I think it was this book that he won the Nobel Peace Prize for literature. So that's a lot of heavy accolades kind of hovering over it before I even pick it up, and I'm feeling a tiny bit intimidated. The final literary fiction work that I would love to read this year is called The Wax Child. This is by Olga Ravn. I will put it on the screen here. This is translated by Martin Aitken. Firstly, this cover is gorgeous. This is everything that would just make me buy a book on looks alone. What ultimately drew me in to put this on my 2026 reading list is that it is a blend of literary historical fiction. I think there are also witches, there is occultism, I think there are some sort of women's writings, women's feminist type themes running through it. Also religion, and a lot of reviews are calling this a really effing creepy book. So that massively intrigued me. I've seen reviews also saying this is almost borderline a horror, and it's also kind of weird fiction. And that is like a bit of everything that I love. I am very much down for some sort of literary, oddball, genre blending fiction, and because this has also just come out in the last year, books that are new releases are always so much more tantalising on our literary taste buds, aren't they? This is described as, in 1620, Christens Krukow fashions a small human being figure from beeswax, shaping it with the warmth of her body. Though its ears and eyes cannot open, the wax child watches and listens. As rumours of witchcraft spread, it bears witness to whispered fears, fragile friendships, and the growing violence of men and their laws. Once suspicion takes hold, it proves impossible to escape. Based on real 17th century Danish witch trials, the Wax Child is a haunting, lyrical vision of a world where belief in magic is as real as the earth and sea. So one of the reviews for this said, something truly special, a wonderfully weird novel full of lines that will rattle around your brain. That was the Sunday Times. The next genre is horror, and if you have been around for a little bit, you know that I haven't been able to read much horror recently because I am going through or dealing with PTSD, and books that are quite explicitly violent or unsettling, I just can't read at the moment. But it doesn't mean that I haven't got at least 3 that hopefully maybe later in the year, depending on how this journey goes. The first is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. And this is a signed copy as well. This is one I've been influenced into purchasing because I had seen quite a few horror book girlies recommend this and had quite visceral reactions whilst reading it. When I was in the bookshop buying this, the bookseller said to me, "Oh, I love that, one of my favourite horrors of the previous year." And I said, "Great." I said, "I've heard that this is really dark." And she said words to the effect of, "Yeah, absolutely grim, really effed me up." And I looked at her and I said, "I'm ready to get hurt." This is meant to be a literary horror, and I don't see a lot of literary horror written by female authors that come with these sorts of blockbuster reviews. Like, this has got a lot of accolades and blurbings and positive reviews behind it, so it's got a lot of traction, I think is what I'm trying to say, and I've seen and heard a lot about it. I feel like this has been really big in the horror community the last year or so. I've frequently heard it compared to Agustina Bazterrica's Tender as the Flesh, because this also has themes of cannibalism within it. It's also been characterised as being eerie and creepy and folky, and much more of a sort of smouldering kind of book. Tender as the Flesh is a bit heavy-handed, I think, with the violence and the gore. It's a bit more in your face, it's a bit more plot-driven. I've heard this is more subtle. The blurb says, "Margot and Mama have lived in the forest since Margot can remember. When Margot isn't at school, they spend quiet days together in the cottage waiting for strangers to knock on their door. Strays, Mama calls them. Mama loves the strays. She feeds them wine, keeps them warm, then satisfies her burning appetite by picking apart their bodies. But Mama's want is stronger than her hunger sometimes, and when a white-toothed stray named Eden turns up in the heart of a snowstorm, little Margot must confront the shifting dynamics of her family, untangle her own desires, and make a bid for freedom." With this tender coming-of-age tale, debut novelist Lucy Rose explores how women swallow their anger, desire, and animal instincts, and wrings the relationship between mother and daughter until blood drips from it. Speaking of Agustina Bazterrica, the second horror book that I would like to get to in 2026, fingers crossed, is her second novel. This is called The Unworthy, and it's translated by Sarah Moses, I think. This came out in the last year, and I've heard it is also another gruesome, brutal offering from her. I did enjoy Tender as the Flesh. I did think it was quite original. I believe this is also still in the same genre. I believe it's body horror, but also grim future worlds, dystopia. I kind of get that vibe from just what I've read around it. This is blurbed as, "In the house of the sacred sisterhood, the unworthy live in fear of superior sister's whip. Seething with resentment, they plot against each other and await who will ascend to the level of the enlightened, and who will suffer the next exemplary punishment. Risking her life, one of the unworthy keeps a diary in secret, and slowly memories surface from a time before the world collapsed, before the sacred sisterhood became the only refuge. And then Lucia arrives. She too is unworthy, but she is different, and her presence brings a single spark of hope to a world of darkness." And then here's what's curious. Lucy Rose has written a blurb for this book, and she describes it as barbaric, brutal, and utterly beautiful. This is a searing haunt of a novel that I will never forget. I've got this one on Kindle, so hopefully later in the year I will be able to read it. The third and final horror that I would love to read in 2026 is Revival by Stephen King. I featured this in my Read or Unhaul It horror edition video, and I read the first 30 or so pages and really enjoyed it, but I just wasn't in a place really to be reading much horror because of previous mentioned reasons. I recently discovered a YouTuber called Paperback Journeys. I'll put a link to his channel below and in the description. He reviewed this book as part of his October kind of spooky season wrap up. His review of it was so good, and it, you know how some people just describe books and It just instantly makes you want to go read a copy of that book, and it reminded me so much of what I love about Stephen King. His gift of being able to summarize books in a really clear, concise but evocative way, it made it sound so compelling. And I think he gave it a 3.75 or sort of 4 stars. He said it wasn't a 5-star rating, but it was certainly a good reading experience, and that he didn't also perceive it to be too much of a horror. What he drew on was the more domestic drama type aspects of these two central characters and charting them growing up together. He said the horror was more like a sting in the tail towards the end of this, and just based on his review alone, it really made me want to bump it up on my TBR, and hopefully later this year I will be able to read it. The next genre is thriller, and I have quite a few of them on my Kindle on the back burner that I might get to this year, but there is one that is kind of top of the list that I would really like to get to, and that is With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. I don't think of Riley Sager's works are, to me, too triggering, so this might be an okay thriller to kind of hop back into that genre with. It is described as a fast-paced thriller about a carefully planned journey that brings together a group of strangers linked by a violent past. When a woman boards a long-distance train, it soon becomes clear the trip is no coincidence, and as secrets surface and tensions rise, the passengers realise they are trapped in a dangerous game with no easy escape. Set in a confined, high-stakes setting, the novel explores revenge, justice, and how far someone will go to confront those who changed their life forever. This novel is entirely set around a train journey, and it very much gives me Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express vibes. I've also not read any books by Sager that are set in the 40s and 50s, but I would be really curious to see if a change in decade or time period informs a change in his writing style or the type of work that we get from him. This is kind of advertised as being very fast-paced and twisty, and I think that will be a nice light-hearted read to enjoy maybe later in the year. The next genre is non-fiction. There are 3 works that I would love to read in 2026. The first is a non-fiction called Feeding the Monster, Why Horror Has a Hold on Us. So many times I've picked this up and put it back down, and because I've always told myself I have too many books on my TBR already, I believe this is kind of a literary critical work that explores why we love horror, why it thrills us, why we love horror movies. Is there something about the type of person that enjoys and consumes horrors? And I'm curious to see what sort of themes and tropes and genres and what this research kind of straddles, and what this is a criticism of, and which works or texts or movies she's going to kind of dig into. Although I believe this is quite an academic work, I've seen people say that what they love about it is that it's very accessible and easy to read, and it breaks down a lot of literary theory, or sort of movie type criticism, all those sorts of intersections quite well, and make it accessible to read, which is great for my little frazzled brain. This final work of non-fiction is a book I have wanted to read probably the most out of all books in the last year or so, but because it is the most graphic and violent out of potentially anything I would read, if I'm looking after my brain and being kind to myself, this isn't a book that I probably should pick up in 2026, but I'm still going to put it on this list and pray that by the end of the year my mental health is such that I can read this. This is Murderland by Caroline Fraser. She wrote one of my top 10 favourite books of all time, which is a biography and beautifully well-researched book on Laura Ingalls Wilder, and she has now turned her attention to the serial killer phenomenon from the 70s. Fraser's writing is exquisite. She won the Pulitzer for Wildfires, which is the Ingalls work, and as a result, as soon as I saw she had another biography type piece coming out, I needed to get my hands on it, but I have not purchased a copy of it due to my own health. So this is as much a true crime work, but also a biography work, but also it's doing environmental type research as well. It straddles quite a few genres, and the subtitle for this is called Crime and Bloodlust in the Time of Serial Killers, and there is one theory that I've seen increasingly emerging to do with why there was such an outbreak or prevalence of serial killers in the 70s. It's described as an hallucinatory hybrid work of true crime, memoir, environmental reportage, and Lynchian fever dream that makes an audacious claim that the toxic plumes from industrial smelting plants helped birth a generation of American serial killers. A Tacoma native who grew up in the shadow of Ted Bundy, Fraser plunges us into the dark, poisoned underworld of the Pacific Northwest at a time when bloodstreams were full of lead and monsters were 10 a penny. This is a riveting, terrifying descent. If you are a true crime aficionado, I think this is definitely one for your reading list. And on the cover as well, she's got a picture of Bundy, and I think she recovers him as well. And there's so much in this that I would love. I just hope that I'm well enough to read it, not to keep labouring the point. But yes, this is the final non-fiction item for 2026. Yeah. Can you lie down, please? Can you lie down? Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Trying to film. Is that you? Can you see yourself? If you sit, you can stay. If you sit, you can stay. See? The final genre is poetry. I have 3 items that I would love to read this year. You will have seen these before on my channel, so I'll be really quick. This is Poem for the Day, Volume 1, edited and forwarded by Wendy Cope. I've shared this before because I'm still reading through it. I'm trying to read a poem every day or every few days. I think I started this in September last year, so I should be done in August of this year. I've been enjoying dipping in and out of this. It's a really varied selection of poetry, and it's just a nice little thing, like part of my nighttime routine, that I have been reading a couple each day. Next, I have Volume 1 of the Poetry Pharmacy. This is Tried and True Prescriptions for the Heart, Mind and Soul. I talked about this only in my last video, so I will spare you a further description, but this I think is going to be in my top 5 books of the year. I'm very delighted to have this copy in my hands and start. I'm very delighted to have this copy in my hands, and I'm going to read it this month. I cannot wait further in the year to read and get through this. This is a January read for sure. The third and final poetry volume is Poems of the Sea, introduction by Adam Nicholson and edited by Gabby Morgan. I got this at the National Maritime Museum earlier in the year, and it's just been sat on my TBR for the last 6 months. So if I do not pick this up in the next few weeks to try and read through it, I think I will donate it because it's a lovely little edition. Really gorgeous papers. I don't know if you can see the sort of waves. These are all poems and pieces of poetry around the theme of the sea, and I think at the time when I bought this it sounded really intriguing, but it has not tickled my fancy in the last 6 months. Like, I haven't felt like reading poems about the sea or water, really. I might even donate it, I'm not sure. I'm on the shelf about it, but this is, if I put it in this video, hopefully it will incentivize me to at least give it a shot. If you have made it this far, please leave me a skull emoji in the comments, because I will then know that you are a real one, that you stuck with me through all of this reading list. I'm really hopeful that 2026 is going to be one of my best reading years ever. Have you set yourself a reading goal this year? And what are the books in 2026 that you are most excited to pick up? Do let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, please do like, comment and subscribe, and happy reading. We're just chatting about books, babe. We're just chatting about books.